I have been traveling the last week. I was in Fort Monroe. I don't know if you even know that place, and it's in Pakistan, by the way. Heavy Punjab mein. And I was meeting my employees, I was meeting people there, I was meeting musicians as well. So I had a great time. And while I was on that journey, one of the girls I met over there works with us at Bank of Punjab. And her concern for herself and for her future and her career, it was very interesting for me to observe that, because I've been taking this journey for the last 2.5 years within the same bank, and I can tell you the transformation that has taken place because of multiple elements that have changed over the last 2.5 years. So her concern was not really relevant anymore to being promoted or having more salary, and that's what you normally see on a baseline level. But she was more concerned about what are the skills that I need to have in the future, and what kind of trainings, other trainings I can go for, what are the certifications that I can look at, and how can I relocate to bigger cities so that I can grow. And this is coming from somebody who is working there and a single person who wants to move. So for me, that in itself shows the impact of transformation that we have been working on in the last 2.5 years, because 2.5 years back, the most questions I would get were about the salary and about the promotions and what were the next promotions due. So that whole process, I think, as a practitioner, something that I can sort of talk about in my few slides that I have here. So the first component, of course, I think Zuhair has already sort of covered, and I wouldn't go a lot into it, is essentially the fact that we actually have gone through a huge disruptive process, and that was the COVID. And that was the largest disruption that any of the societies or countries could actually handle. What it actually taught us, two things. I think one component, of course, was the digitalization and technology part that meant that we were going forward at a breakneck speed to incorporate technology and digitalization in our processes, in the way we were working. But the second part is extremely important, and that is really where all of us connect as human beings with each other. So while working remotely, we realized that having that human connection is so very important. And not having that human connection, taken that away from us, we are somehow left bereft of one of the key components of being human, and that's the connectivity that we actually get from each other, and the energy that we get from each other. And when we don't have that energy, we need to somehow get it from other sources. And I'm talking about these 5 generations working jointly together currently. So when we look at millennials, they would respond to it in a different way. They are much more tuned to the technology world. And the older generations would be less and less tuned, and yet everybody has had to run at the same pace. And for an organization, from a structural point of view, this requires a rethink. The rethink model that we actually have gone for requires, and from HR perspective, it requires to be at the center of a number of elements that we are looking at the same time. And at the same time, when I talk about being human, I'm talking about looking at the future. But when we are looking at the future, I think the previous Walid Saab mentioned all these accelerations, everything happening at the same time, but what the organization requires from you is growth. You require a holistic growth where the organization may be looking at profitability only, or beyond that, but what are you looking at as HR practitioners? We are looking at productivity, but the organization may only be looking at profitability. So how do you connect these two lines? We are looking at employment, we are looking at ESG frameworks, and this is something new. Sustainability is something that we've just started working on, and globally it's one of the main components that everybody is not just talking about, but they have a lot of work being done on this already. There are a lot of impact stories already out there. So how does all this connect? So there's the technology world and there's the human in us. And the human in us and the HR, the human resources, connects both. And how do we connect it? We just need to get out of our way of thinking and our way of traditional way of working. Our responsibility really is huge. It's not about an organization anymore. It's really about how we bring it all together. And then while we are looking at that expansion, are we able to do that? How do we do it? So do we have any idea of the kind of empowerment that is required to be able to expand? To innovate, you require empowerment. To expand, you require, again, empowerment. So every component of it essentially comes down to these factors. So you need to pin it down every time, and then you look at the impact across the organization, across the industry, across the country, and of course then you can go global and how you actually impact globally. Because this is where we need to really look towards how we are perceived currently as Pakistan across the world, how we are seen as professionals, how we connect with that is also extremely important. So our importance, the importance of the work of disruptors, the importance of the work of HR becomes more and more, I think, the center point that we need to look at all times. So with this, I would like to thank all of you for listening patiently, and hopefully also all of you were up. I think so. Yeah. Thank you.